Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Baba Batra. We are up to Perek Yud Mishna Gimel. Today's Mishnah should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai V'Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Chana bat Miriam Sason ben Ryan Yoshua ben Shifra Menuchatam Began Eden Amen and Le'avdir ben Chaim Lechaim V'Derefua Shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa Betor Shach Chole Israel and Dachlama Merav Binyamin Od Zion Chai ben Dvorah. Usually, a document is used to record testimony about a transaction between two parties, such as in a loan document or a bill of sale, or to actually affect the transaction, as in the case of a bill of divorce. Since a document has legal consequences for the parties, it cannot be prepared without the consent of one or both of the parties. The next two Mishnayot will list several types of documents and teach whose consent is required to prepare them, as well as who must pay to have them prepared. This Mishnah lists those documents that can be prepared with the consent of one of the two parties. Kotvin ged la'ish afal pi she'en ishto imo. We may write a bill of divorce for a man, even if his wife is not with him. The scribe writes the bill of divorce and the witnesses sign it. The husband then takes the completed bill of divorce from the scribe and uses it to divorce his wife. Since the husband is biblically allowed to divorce his wife even without her consent, he may have the bill of divorce prepared even without her knowledge. A woman may not have a bill of divorce prepared because she could then produce it and falsely claim that she has already been divorced. Vashover laisha, and we may write a receipt for a woman that states that her ketubah has been paid and give it to her so she will have it ready to give to her husband or his heirs when the ketubah is paid to her. Afal pi she'en ba'ala imah, even if her husband is not with her. Since this document states that the woman is no longer owed her ketubah, it may be written only with her consent. The husband's knowledge or consent is not needed. Now, the general rule is that if a document has the potential to cause one party a loss or an obligation, that party must consent to its preparation. The ketubah receipt has the potential to cause the woman a loss, because if it finds its way into the husband's hands or the hands of his heirs, the wife will no longer be able to collect her ketubah. Therefore, it can be prepared only with her knowledge and consent. The husband, however, has nothing to lose if the receipt is prepared. On the contrary, the document can only bring him benefit. Therefore, it can be written without his knowledge, as his consent can be assumed. If the woman chooses to have a receipt prepared in advance, it is her responsibility to make sure that the husband does not get it until he pays the ketubah. Now, a receipt cannot be written for the husband without the wife's knowledge and consent, however, because it is possible that he has not paid the ketubah and will use the receipt to falsely claim that it was already paid. The Mishnah states that these laws are true only when an additional condition is satisfied. Ubilvad she'em makiran, but this is only if the scribe and witnesses are familiar with both of them. A husband can have a bill of divorce written in advance only if the scribe and witnesses know his name and his wife's name, because otherwise we must be concerned that he is having it written to give to another woman who is not his wife, who will use it fraudulently to claim that her husband divorced her. For example, Reuven goes to a scribe who does not know him and states that his name is Shimon. He asks the scribe to prepare a bill of divorce which states that Shimon is divorcing his wife Leah. He then takes a document and gives it to Leah, who will use it to claim that her husband Shimon has divorced her. Or if the scribe knows Reuven but does not know his wife's name, Reuven could still have him write a bill of divorce that can be fraudulently used by another woman whose husband's name is also Reuven. And the woman can have a receipt for a ketubah payment written for her only if the scribe and witnesses know her name and her husband's name. Otherwise, we are concerned that she is having it written to give to another man so that he can fraudulently claim that he paid his wife's ketubah. For example, a chel asks a scribe who does not know her name to prepare a receipt which states that Reuven paid Leah's ketubah. She then gives the receipt to Reuven, who will use it to claim that he paid his divorced wife Leah's ketubah, when in fact he did not. If the scribe knows the names of both parties, however, this is not a concern. Even if the scribe knows the names of both the husband and wife, it is still possible for a husband to have a bill of divorce prepared and then give it to the wife of another couple with identical names. However, we are not concerned for such an unlikely possibility. Va'abal noten sachar, and the husband must pay the scribe for the cost of writing both the bill of divorce and the receipt. He must pay for the bill of divorce because it is his responsibility to prepare a bill of divorce and give it to his wife if he wishes to divorce her. The Torah states in Dvarim chapter 24 verse 1 that the husband or a scribe acting as his agent must write the bill of divorce and give it to his wife. Since the scribe is acting as his agent, he must pay the cost. The Mishnah teaches the original law. However, even in Talmudic times, the rabbis saw that husbands were refusing to prepare bills of divorce for their wives because they did not wish to pay the scribes, and so they decreed that the woman should pay the scribe, as the Gemara says in Batra, page 168a. And the husband must pay for the receipt because it is written for his benefit, so his wife will not be able to collect her ketubah more than once. A woman may claim her ketubah by producing proof in beddin that she has been divorced. A receipt is given to the husband so she is not able to claim the ketubah a second time in a different beddin. The Mishnah now discusses loan documents. Kotvin shtar lelove af al pi shen malveh imo. We may write a loan document for a borrower even if the lender is not with them. Since the document states that the borrower owes money to the lender, it has the potential to cause a loss only to the borrower. Therefore, if he consents, it can be written even if the lender is not present. The borrower may prepare a loan document even before the loan is made, as long as he agrees to create a lien on his property from the date that the document is written, even if the loan takes place later. It is the borrower's responsibility to ensure that the lender does not receive the document unless the loan is actually made. Then kotvin lamalveh ad sheloveh imo, but we may not write a loan document for the lender unless the borrower is with them, because the lender may never actually lend the borrower any money, and he can use the document to fraudulently claim payment from him. Even if the lender tells the witnesses that he plans to make the loan and that they should hold the document and not release it to him until they receive confirmation that the loan has actually been made, it may not be written for him without the borrower's consent, because it has the potential to cause the borrower a loss should the witnesses lose it. And the borrower pays for the document since it is being written for his benefit to enable him to obtain the loan. Even if the document is not for a regular loan but for a business arrangement known as an iska, in which a portion of the funds are given as a loan and the balance is a transfer of funds to be used for business, so the transaction described in the documents benefits the lender as well as the borrower must still pay for the document because he is the one who benefits the most from such an arrangement. The final type of document that the Mishnah discusses is a bill of sale. Kotvin shtar lemocher af al pi shen lokech imo. We may write a sale document for a seller even though the buyer is not with them, because the seller is the only one who stands to lose thereby. The seller can have a bill of sale prepared even before the sale is made, and it is his responsibility to keep it from the buyer until the sale takes place. The buyer loses nothing if such a document is prepared, and in the end the sale does not take place. Therefore, it can be prepared even without his knowledge. Then kotvin alokech ad shem mocher imo, but we may not write a sale document for the buyer unless the seller is with him, because the buyer could use such a document to falsely claim property that he never bought. The document can cause loss to the seller, and it therefore may not be prepared without his consent. V'alokech noten sachar, and the buyer pays for a bill of sale, since he is considered to be the one who benefits more from a sale. It is always better to buy than to sell, as the popular saying goes, if you have bought, you have acquired, but if you have sold, you have lost, as the Gemara says in Batra, page 51a. This is true even if the property being purchased is of inferior quality. And that is in a Mishna Gimel. Now, again, Mishna Gimel listed documents that can be written with the consent of one of the parties to a transaction. Mishnah Daled lists documents that can be written only when both parties consent. En kotvin shitre rusin v'nisuin ele midat shneim. We may not write the documents that are written at the time of betrothal, the first stage of Jewish marriage, and again, we may not write the documents that are written at the time of betrothal and marriage unless it is with the consent of both the groom and the bride. A document of betrothal records financial agreements made between the bride's family and the groom's family before the marriage. And the document of marriage refers to the ketubah, which the groom gives the bride when they marry. Since each of these documents records monetary commitments that are made by both parties, they may not be written without the consent of both parties. But the groom alone pays the cost of writing the documents. Even though both the bride and the groom benefit from these agreements, the main benefit is received by the groom, and therefore he has to pay for the documents. The husband is considered the main beneficiary because he is the one who receives a dowry, and furthermore it is he who acquires his wife rather than the other way around. Like we learned in the previous Mishnah, the buyer is viewed as benefiting from a purchase more than the seller benefits from the sale. Even if the groom is a Torah scholar, in which case the bride's father is especially happy to acquire such a fine groom for his daughter, the groom is viewed as the main beneficiary of the match. We also may not write documents that describe sharecropping or tenant farming agreements unless it is with the consent of both the landlord and the renter. One can rent a field to farm it under either a sharecropping agreement in which he gives a percentage of the crop to the owner, or a tenant farming agreement in which he pays a fixed amount of produce to the owner every year. Since documents that formalize such arrangements create obligations upon both the landowner and the renter, they cannot be written into a document unless both parties agree. The document attests to the fact that the landowner has agreed to rent his field for a certain number of years, and also to the amount that the sharecropper or tenant farmer has agreed to pay his rent each year. Once a document is signed, neither party can retract. Therefore, even if there is already a verbal agreement, it cannot be recorded in a document without the agreement of both parties. And the one who receives the field, meaning the renter, pays the cost of writing the document, for he is considered the main beneficiary of the arrangement. The sharecropper or tenant farmer is similar to the buyer in a sale, whom we view as benefiting more than the seller. We also may not write documents of choosing or any documents that record court judgments unless it is with the consent of both parties. Documents of choosing are documents that are prepared when two people who wish to have their dispute settled by a court each choose a judge to be part of a beddin that will hear their case. The two judges then pick a third judge to complete the panel of judges. This is a type of court procedure known as zabla. The Hebrew word zabla stands for the word zeborer lo echad, which means this one chooses one. The document records the name of the judge chosen by each side so that neither side can retract their choice. A document is also written recording the claims and arguments that each person advanced in court. It is necessary to record the claims and arguments so the litigants will be unable to change their claims during the case, which is not permitted. Documents of court judgments are documents that record a verdict rendered by the court, or a document given to a litigant to give him the power to seize property in payment of a court judgment. These documents contain information that can potentially be a liability to either side. Therefore, they can be written only with both parties' knowledge. And both parties pay the cost of the documents of choosing between them, since they both benefit from having them written. The Mishnah Tano rules that documents that record litigants' claims are written differently. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Shneim kotvin shnayim lezeh la'atzmo v'lezeh la'atzmo. The two litigants write two documents, this one for himself and this one for himself. According to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, each litigant can say that he does not wish the other litigant to have all of his claims and arguments available. Each litigant can say that he does not wish the other litigant to have all of his claims and arguments available, so he can study them and plan how he will counter them. To avoid this, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says we write a separate document for each litigant. And the Rav tells us, Ve'en halacha ki Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that halacha does not follow the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. And that is the Nebutai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.